This will be the next video in the series. It's going to be video number 10, I believe. Okay, and in this video, we're going to be creating child windows in our application. Okay, so let me compile this program here for you. Let's see here. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We have a program. We have our main window, which is the gray area, the title bar, the minimize, maximize, close button. And what we're going to discuss in this video is going to basically be those two white areas inside the window, which are basically they represent windows, okay, child windows, and also the static text, which represents here, it's another window inside the child window. So what we have here is basically the following setup. Here we have the main window, okay, which is the parent window. Then we have a child window. We actually have two child windows, which are represented by the white squares here inside the window. And then one of the child windows has also another child window, a static text window, and it displays the info inside it. Okay, so that's the logic here that we have. Okay, so let's take a look at that here. So let's begin at this area here. So basically to create the flex images is going to do some review here, basic stuff. So to create the main window, okay, we first have to basically step one, inside the winMain function, step one would be to declare a window class structure and initialize it, right, for each window. Then we have to register the window class structure by calling register class, and we have to register that window class with the operating system. Then we call CreateWindow function with the registered class to create that window. And then we call the show main window, and we then enter the message loop. So let's look at the code here. So here's what we have. So we first inside the main function here, we are going inside the main. So we're declaring the window class structure for our main window. Okay, so what we do here, we're filling in the window class structure information here. We have the window procedure right there, main window procedure, the background brush here, cursor icon right there, reloading. So the class name. We have the class name here. Okay, that we registered. So we call it, this is registered class name. Okay. And then what we're doing, we also registering another window class, and we're calling, okay, so here we're registering our window class here. And we also here declaring another window class for our child windows. Okay, this is the window class that we're going to use for our child window. So what we have here is basically our child window procedure here that we're going to link to. The background brush is a white brush here. We're calling the window class my class window 2. That's what we're calling the class name. And yeah, so this is all the base of sometimes what you can do, you can just copy and paste, because most of the stuff is going to be the same, the window class, right? Then change the variable name to something like added number 2 here, right? And then basically just adjust the variables that make that class unique compared to the previous class. Okay, and then we're going to register. We're going to also register the class here with the Windows operating system. And then we're going to create our main window, which we're creating our main window here. So we have the overlap window, which gives us a bunch of styles combined into one. Okay, if you're not sure what that overlap window is, I went over that in the previous videos. You can watch the previous videos, or you can look online what the overlap represents. All right. And then we go show window, update window, which I went over before. And then we go into our message loop. Okay. So what happens then when we go into our message loop? The next step, basically, let's look here. Okay, we go in the message loop, we go from creating this main window here to creating the child window. So here's what happens. The next step, Windows operating system, when we create window, when you call this function create window here, okay, what happens is that Windows operating system basically is going to send a window message create to our window procedure, to our main window procedure. And when it does this, two things happens. One thing will happen. It's gonna pass to our window procedure something called which is creation structure for our window. And we're gonna use that information from that creation structure later on in our L parameter. Double parameter is no. And so when we process the VM create message, we're gonna be creating our child windows using the VM create message. And the return value for the VM create message should be 0 if we want to proceed with the creation of that window, or -1 if we want to exit. So in our case, let's look at the code here. So if we look at the code, so here's what we do. We go to our main window procedure, which like this is the signature above here for the main window procedure here. Okay, and let's look at our main window procedure. So here's our main window procedure. So what we do here is first, once we enter the main window procedure, we're gonna declare two variables, a handle to one first child window and a handle to a second child window. Very important that you declare those variables static variables. What static variables do for us is basically the compiler will like the system will retain the value of those variables for the duration of the program. It will not just retain the value for the duration of the window procedure, but rather for the whole length of the program. So as long as our program is running, the values of those those variables will not change unless we change them. So what that means, for example, if we did not declare those variables as static, what would happen when the main window procedure would exit? Okay, those variables would be gone, and then when it re-enters, they would have to be recreated. When we declare them as static, what happens? They remain there. So whenever we re-enter the main window procedure, those variables are there and they retain the value whatever they had before until we changed it. So until we change those values, they're going to retain those values. Okay. So that's very important. So either you have to declare them, if you declare them inside the main window procedure, you can do that, or you have to declare them global. Okay. But the preferred option is just to declare them as static variables inside the main window procedure. So the next thing, so what will happen? So when we call that create window function, the system is going to send to our main window procedure. It's going to send VM create message. Okay, so when we process the VM create message, we're going to create our two child windows. So the windows we're going to create are basically those two white squares. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here is going to create window. So we're going to put my class window. We're going to put the title of the window, even though we don't have to. Like we can put no, but I just left it there. And then we have to specify, very important, that this is a child window. So to create a child window, we specify this style, VS child window, and we are specifying VS window style visible. So what we're doing here is basically telling the operating system that it's going to be a child window and it's going to be visible from the outset, from this very beginning. Then we specify the X and Y locations inside where we want the video window to be created. So what it is basically we're specifying so from X and Y location from the inside the client area of our main window where the child is to be located. So 10 in the X direction and 10 in the Y direction. Okay. And then we're specifying the size. So we have 100 by 100 pixels. Next, we specify the handle to the parent window. Okay. So in this case, our main window is going to be the parent of this child window. So we specify handle to this window. We're passing hwind, which is basically coming from, we're going to get that in the main window procedure. Okay, so that is where it's coming from. And next, we're going to specify null. So we're not going to give an ID to this window. Because if you want to give an ID, we're going to show you how to do that later. But this window will not have an ID. Then we specify the instance handle. So basically we're calling the get module handle function with a null value, which says that the current instance of this application is where this window belongs to. And then creation parameters, which for this window there is no creation parameters, so we're specifying it as null. It's for the first window. So what we're doing here we're creating this window here. Okay, this window. Next, we're going to create the second window here in this thing. So the second window is going to be this window here. Okay, this white square to the right, on the right side. Okay, so here's what we're doing. We're also creating using the same window class. We're specifying the title, even though we don't have to, because that is, in this our case, it's irrelevant, the title here. Child window visible. Okay, now we specify the location again, so it's 120 in the x direction and 10. Okay, the width and the height, parent window, the ID of the window, so it's null, specified an ID, the instance, and here we specify the creation parameters. And here what you can do, you can pass address of the structure or the integer or whatever you want to pass to the window. So what we're doing here is we declare a static integer e with the value 4. And what we're doing, we're just passing this value by reference to the child window procedure that we're going to go over in a few moments. Okay, and that will create our second window. Now let's look at a little bit of a background here. So let's look at this. So we went through the step 1. Okay, so here. So this is what we did. Then let's look at the step 2. Inside the main window procedure, inside the main window procedure to create those two child windows. So we declared static handles variables to those two child windows. We process the VM create message. So we process that message. Inside the VM create message, we call create window again with the style as window start child window will start visible and handle the parent window. So here's again the emphasis is on so we're using the second class that we declared before for the child window. The text we can use any title, it won't matter because we're not doing anything with the title. That we're specifying this window style, so we have to specify it's a child window visible and handle to a window. And the get module handle retrieves the handle to the current instance of your application, which acts like a handle to an instance that is being passed to your application in WinMain. Okay, and also is being passed to your window procedure during the VM create message as L parameter, which points to a create structure that has the H instance value. So I'm gonna over this stuff I'm gonna go over in a few moments and explain how to retrieve that, how to get the information from the create structure. Okay, and then in the step 3, inside the child window procedure, okay, we're gonna create this static window. So what we're gonna do here inside the child procedure, we're gonna declare H instance window variable to hold the handle to our child window that's going to be created. Process the VM create message again, and inside the VM create message, we're going to create a window with the styles window start visible, window child window, but the only difference is the text, the class is going to be what's called like a static class that's already given to us by Windows operating system. So we don't have to create our own class. The system is going to we're going to use the class from the system. There's a bunch of classes that's predefined for us already. Okay, so let's go back to the code here. And what we're doing, so we're going here. We have our child window procedure. and we are creating the VM create message here. Okay, and then inside our VM create message, I'm gonna go over this stuff. What this is a little bit complicated here stuff, but I'm gonna go over that in detail in a few moments what it does. But right now we'll just concentrate our creation window. So let's look at here. So at this here, so again, we have created a static handle to our window. So it's gonna be a handle to our window. Then we create in the VM create message. All right. And then, so here we're creating the static class. So this window is being created with a static class, which is predefined class for us in Windows. So there's a static button. I'm gonna go over those predefined classes in later videos. But right now you just have to know that it's a static class that's predefined there, so you can use it. The text is the info. So in this case, this is the name that's being displayed inside the window class here. So it says info. So that's what's displayed there. It's a VS child window with visible and VS thick frame. We added an extra class here, window style. Sorry, we added extra style here. So what the thick frame, what it does, it creates this like a darker border around here. So that's the thick frame option. So without it will be like more like a flat. This thick frame gives it like a more like a 3D look. Okay. And here we have again in this case edge window to the parent window. In this case is the child window. And here we're creating the ID for this window. So we putting an integer value, but we have to cast it to H menu type. Okay, so that's how you convert it to an H menu type, and then this is going to be the ID of this window, the module handle, and there's no creation parameters for it. Okay. So now let's look at what we have here. So here's what we have. So far we have parent window created in the win main. Okay, so this is the parent window. We have the two child windows with the background are being created in the window procedure for that window, which is the main window procedure. Also the two child windows are siblings to each other. So they are child windows of the main window, and they are siblings to each other. And the static control, okay, which is this area here, the info, is created inside the child window procedure. So what we have is something like this. We have window procedure for our main window. We have a child window procedure for two child windows that we created. So those two window procedures we have created. And that there is a third procedure, which is static window procedure. I mean, the name could be something else. I'm not sure. I've never seen it, but I'm just for this video, I'm just assuming it's a static. So I'm just because the window is called static, so I'm assuming it's a static window procedure. It could be the name could be different, but to us it's irrelevant because it's actually inside the Windows API. So we don't see this window procedure, but this window procedure handles any messages for that window and how it's displayed. So how the info area is used and so forth. That is handled by the static window procedure. And the procedure basically, so unless we subclass this window procedure, we don't deal with it. Okay, and I will show you how to subclass our window procedure in later windows at some point. Okay, so that's what we have here. So let's go on here. So let's see here. No, that's not gonna. Okay, so let's see here. This is. Let me see which one I'm gonna go here. This discuss here. This. Uh-huh. Okay, let's look at what one. Okay, so let us look at something. Actually, let's skip this for the time being. Let's look over this stuff here. So here's the create window. So just to iterate. So LP class name. So it's the class name that defines the class for this window name. It's a C string type. Also window name. So it's the string title of the window or window text depending on the situation. The style of the window, the X location, Y location, window width, window height, handle to the parent window, or null if no parent window exists. Handle to a menu, or child window identifier. Okay, so H menu can be a handle to a menu or identify a child window, handle to the module associated with the window, and L parameter is the pointer to a value to be passed to the create structure. So I'm going to show you how to retrieve that in a few moments. So this is to compare create window. So static info, style, X, Y, location, width, height, parent window, H window, right? H menu, so identifier for the window, instance of the to which instance of the application this window belongs to. So, and creation parameters are null in this case. Okay. So here's the description of the create window function. So before returning the create window, will send a VM create message to the window procedure for the window that is being created. If the window being created is a child window, overlap window, and a pop-up window, then the create window, in addition to VM create, will also send the following messages: VM non-client create and VM get min-max info. So I think I went over those two other messages in the previous videos, but to us at the moment, those VM non-client create and VM get min-max info are irrelevant. The only relevant message to us is the VM create that we need to use. So before exiting create window, you need to remember that the operating system will send to your main window procedure the VM create message. Okay. Also, if the VS visible style is specified in the window style, then the create window will also send all the necessary messages to the window procedure to activate the window and show it. Okay, so there are other messages coming into your window procedure, but luckily you don't have to worry about those, except for the VM create, which we used. Okay, so now that we have this, so let's look at this stuff here. So this is more like this is a little bit more detailed creation. So let's go over this. So winMain. So we have the winMain function. So we declaring window class. We're specifying the window procedure for our window class, the class name, and the other variables. We're registering the window class. Then we declaring a second window class for our child window. We're specifying the child window procedure. We're specifying the name of the class. We're initializing the other variables also. We're registering the second window class. Okay. Then we're creating that. So, so first we're creating the main window. Okay, using that class that we for the main window. Inside the main window procedure, we declaring two static handles to our child windows. Okay, and inside VM create message, we basically calling create functions with the child window classes and child window styles, and we're creating those two child windows. And then that's inside the main window procedure, and then inside the child window procedure for those two windows that we created, we're declaring another handle to a window for a static control to handle basically the static control. And then we're calling the create function again with the VM static Astra class, which is basically predefined class for us by Windows. And we specify with this child window is visible with the frame, parent window, specifying the identifier for that window, the edge instance. Okay, and then we will create that window. So now, before we look here, okay, so now before we look at how to get that create structure information, okay, we need to do a brief review about pointers. Okay, so let's review what a basic pointer is. And so basically, like a variable has a value and an address. Okay, so let's see here, we are in this location here. So we have an integer, let's say A, it's 78,000, it's an integer value. Integer B is 20. So let's say at address 7012092, we're gonna put, which is gonna be represented for our integer A, we're gonna put 78,000 as in there at that address. Okay. At for integer b, we're gonna at address 7012088, we're gonna put, let's say, 20. Now, next thing we're gonna declare inside our code, we're gonna declare two integer pointers: pointer a, which is represented by PA, and pointer PB. They're gonna also be basically they're 4 bytes long. Pointers are, the size, how many, whatever the bits are. So if it's 32-bit machine, you're gonna be 4 bytes long. Okay, and then what happens is that to assign pointer basically to a value to a pointer, so what we do, we put an ampersand in front of our integer value a. So if you put ampersand in front of variable, it means that you want the address of that variable and not the value. So what will happen at address of pointer a at 7012084, we're gonna put the address of the integer value a. So if you PA is equal to ampersand a, so it's gonna put an address. So that's how it's gonna look in memory here. Okay. And what we can do also, we can convert the integer value into an address. Okay. So what will happen is, to do so, we have to put an typecasted an integer value into a integer pointer. So to do so, we put an int asterisk, which just means integer pointer, and then we put in the variable at the end. So this will convert the value of variable a into an address so that it can be stored as a pointer value in memory. Because if you do PBA, error will be generated since the value a is 78,000 and is represented as a number, not an address. By including integer like an integer pointer, like an integer asterisk, which is an integer pointer in front of a, we convert the number to an address, basically. All right. So that's so this is basically, you have to review this information. It's very important. So we're dealing with pointers here, and that's going to be very helpful to us in a few moments. Okay. So now let's take a look here. So this is, we went over this. This. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So let's go over this for a few moments. Okay. So what I want to do here, to reiterate basically, so how it works. So integer a and integer a. So where the asterisk here is attached to the integer, it's attached to a. Those are two statements I could. This is basically an integer a pointer, and it's equal to an integer a pointer. So they're the same pointer basically. And the structure, the create structure a, has the following values. Like if you look, it says handle to an instance, handle to menu, handle to a parent, window has cy, cx, location, width, height, long, style, class name, extended style if there. Okay, and it has a LP create parameters. This is the creation parameters that we basically, this is the location where we're going to find the address to our creation parameters that we passed in when we were calling create function. When we passed in this information here, the address of e, this is where we're going to find it in the LP create parameter structure. So what we have to do, we have to retrieve those parameters for us. Okay, so let's see here. And also at the very bottom, create structure, it's an alias to this structure, and LP create structure, which stands for long pointer create structure, with an asterisk in front, is an alias to a pointer to the structure. So it's equivalent of basically type, definition, integer, my int, and just like comparison, right? So this is not an integer, this is a structure, but this is like if you want to compare, this is a pointer to the structure, and this is a structure. Okay. So let's look here at this, what I have here. So if it's a integer variable b is equal to 343232. Okay, so let's say at address 2, 3, we put in this integer value. Here we're declaring an integer pointer, okay, with 0. So that's address 753419. We're putting 0 in there. So if we put p my payment, which is a pointer, it is like a pointer to an integer, a variable b, what will happen at address 753419, which is the address of the pointer, you're gonna see 343232, but this is no longer at this point an integer. This is an address, the actual address to memory location to an integer. Okay, it's no longer value. And this is equivalent to the same thing if we put PA equals brackets integer asterisk brackets variable b. So those two statements are equivalent. Okay, that's also very important. So here, okay, so let's look at the retrieval of our L parameter. So what happens is that you need to understand first is that this create structure is part in the operating system, part of the operating, and has an address inside it. So when we call VM create, so the W parameter is going to be null, but the L parameter is going to have an address passed to us by operating system to that structure within the operating system. Okay, so this is the L parameter is going to be, say, let's say 341234, which is, in our example, is the address in the operating system to this create structure for our window that's being created. All right. So now to retrieve this, we have to basically let's look at the code here, do a little bit of a fancy code. So what we do, we have a pointer, we converting the L parameter to a LP create structure pointer, okay? Then we get in which gives us the access to LP create parameters. And then we convert in this LP create parameters to an integer value in our case. So let's look at the logic here. Okay, so let's look at the logic here. This can be of those L parameters. So let's look at the logic, and because it can be a little bit, the code at this point can be a little bit confusing. Okay, so let's see here. So let's look at this from this perspective. So think of this way as this area here being the area inside the structure, okay, like the L parameter. So what happens is that L parameter, right, has an address of 654343. Let's assume, for example, with the address of that structure where the creation structure has an address of 327685. As an example, okay. So here's what needs to happen. The first thing is we converting this L parameter value, which is basically a long integer, to an actual address value. So to do so, we're taking this L parameter and casting it to an LP create structure. Okay, this LP create structure will take the L parameter value and convert it to a pointer, so that it points to the create structure in the operating system memory for that window. Window keeps create structure for each window it creates. This will give you access to all the variables of the create structure. So once we do this, okay, then we pretty much have access to all those variables here, all this stuff here. Okay, but what we actually want this LP create parameters, access to this. So what we have to do, okay, is that the next step with once we have LP create structure L parameter, we have to point to get, because this is a pointer at this point. Okay, so to get access to the the attributes of that structure, you have to put an arrow, right? So you put an arrow. So this is like to LP create parameters. So at this point, we have access. Once we do this, we have access to the LP parameters. And now, so once we have access to this LP create parameters, the next step is to convert that LP parameter, because to whatever it's what we pass. So we know we passed an integer. So we have to convert that value. We have to cast it, this LP parameter, into an integer pointer. Okay, because we pass an actual pointer to an integer, right? When we go, let's go back here. As you know, here we passing it this location. We passing the address of not the actual integer, but rather the address to that integer. So we need to convert. We need to get that address to that integer. So to do so, we converting that this LP create structure L parameter arrow LP create parameters into an integer pointer, and we're storing it in variable A. Okay. So here. So no. All right. And then what we're gonna do? So next we'll take the value of LP create parameter, convert it to an integer pointer address by using the integer asterisk, and then store the result in an integer pointer A, okay, which we declare. So assume we have declared. Then find next step procedure. We have here we go. We have to go and to address of the integer and take the value of address. So we have to dereference. So what we do? So this value, let's say, is 5 at that address, and we have to store it in an actual integer value C. Okay, so we basically then storing that value that address of A represents in actual integer C. Okay, so let's look at the code here. So here's how it plays out. Okay, so here, so this is inside the main window procedure at this point. Okay, what this is happening here. So let's look at the code. So here, so inside this, so here's what happens. So first thing we take the L parameter that we're receiving here in our window procedure. Here we L parameter, okay, this stuff. So we're gonna take this L parameter, convert to LP create structure, which gonna gives us access to all those variables here to get access to this stuff here. Okay. Next step, we want from those variables, we want to take the LP create parameter. Okay, so we're taking, so basically what we're doing here is we're going to this step here, at this step here. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we're going to this step here, LP create. So we're accessing this area here. That's what we're doing, right? Okay, so that we take the access to that LP create parameters. Then this LP create parameter, in our case, represents an address to of the integer that you want to work with. It could represent an address of a structure, you know. It's basically an address, so you have to retrieve that address. So if this was like an address of a structure, this wouldn't be an integer. You would specify a pointer to that structure, okay? But in our case, we're specifying an integer address. So we're converting this to an integer address and storing in a pointer A. So here we're declaring both. We're declaring static integer A pointer. So this A represents a pointer to an address. Okay. So here we're storing that address in A. Then we have to double check something. So if A does not equal null, okay, then what we're doing, we're dereferencing A. So basically we're taking the value at A and storing and making a copy of it into C, which basically we declared here static integer C right here. Okay, so we're storing that. If it was null, so that means if the value of A is equal to null, we're not doing anything here. Okay, then C is equal to 0. And then finally, what happens? So if C is equal to 4, as an example, so we're gonna create a static control. And if C isn't equal to 4, nothing will happen. So this is basically a basic procedure how to use the creation parameters. So let me just go a little bit higher here. Okay, and show you so what I mean. So let's put everything together. So here when we create these two child windows, okay, one child window has null for it. So one, that's why it has nothing in its window, and another child window has e, okay, which is basic value for, and so what integer value, which is 4. And so what I did here is I declared static integer e equal to 4 inside the main window procedure, and I could have declared it as a structure and passed the address of the structure there. Okay, that would have been the same. This is just a basic example that I could think of. It's not the best example, but it just proves the point, like kind of, simple. Okay, so one window has nothing in it, and the other one has this static window created inside its window. So what happens when we do this? So inside the child window procedure, right, the first window, we retrieve that L, we get the retrieve the creations, we get the creation structure, we take the L parameter, so retrieve the creation structure, go to LP create parameters, and retrieve that address, okay, convert into an integer value, and then we check if A does not equal null. In the first example, it will equal null because nothing was passed. Okay, so because it's null, this does not execute this code. Okay, so it's skipped, and this code is not executed also, and therefore window will show nothing in it, so it's an empty window. Okay, the second window, when it comes in, so the second window here, we're passing the address of the integer e, which is equivalent to this here, so to 4. Sorry, an integer e that has a value of 4. So we're passing that address in here, okay, as part of the window creation structure information. Okay, so window creation information. So what in the window child window procedure, okay, so we're retrieving that information here, converting to an integer address. At this point, integer address is not null. So what we're doing here is we dereferencing that A. So we take the address of A and taking whatever value is at that address and copying it to a C, to a local variable. So we have declared static integer C as 0. And then if C is equal to 4, we creating this an extra this static control inside our window. Okay, which is this stuff here. So this is the window that's being created, represents this info here, the static control. And then, yeah, and then, I'm not going to go over that paint message at the moment. I will go over probably next video, the paint message, right? And that's how you create child windows. So also in next couple of videos, I'm going to go over how button works, how edit control works. So there are a bunch of controls that Windows gives you that are predefined. And then you can use those, you can use them, to communicate, okay, to enter information, retrieve information. So yeah, so okay, so let me go over this quickly to conclude. Okay, so first thing first, you can declare a signature for main window procedure and child window procedure, which is basically to have the same signature. Inside the main window function, you're going to declare window class for each window that you want to create, except for the generic windows that's already given to you, like static button. Okay, so you don't have to do that unless you're subclassing. But in our case, we're not subclassing, we're using the default behavior of those windows. but and so we declare a a second window class for our child windows. So what you're doing here, we're registering those two classes. So here we're registering those two classes with windows. Then inside the main window function, winMain, basically we create our main window, which is we're doing this here. Then we show this window and update the window. So, and when we process the VM create message at this point, what happens is that a VM create message is sent to our window procedure. So in our main window procedure, we process the VM create message with a return value of 0. Okay. And before we enter the VM create message, we have to declare two handles to our windows of type static. They have to be static. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to be problems, like when programs could crash. All right, so we have to declare them static. And then we, inside the VM create message, we're creating our window by calling again create window functions. But in this case, with the class being our child window class, which is we call my class window 2. And then also one of the child windows function that we're calling to create our child window has some creation parameters that we're passing it to customize the creation of that window. Okay. And then the child window procedure processes the retrieves the creation VM create message, and retrieves the creation structure, accesses the LP create parameters attribute of that structure, converts it to an address because we're passing that address in there. So we have to convert that from an integer value to an address, storing it into a local integer pointer. Then if that integer pointer is not null, we dereference that integer pointer and storing the actual value of that integer pointer that's there into a local variable. And then we're comparing to see if that, if it's what you wanted, if that creation parameters is what we wanted here. And based on those creation parameters, we create, we're creating additional information for that window. So in this case, we're just creating under static control. Okay. And right here, so we're calling the create window function. So it's very complicated. It's very simple. Lots of repetition. Okay, so lots of calling the same functions, with different attributes, basically. Sorry, not attributes, but more or less parameters of that function. And yeah, so it's very easy. So let's look at here at the window. So we have 3 windows, So actually, sorry, 4 windows, because we have main window, 2 child windows, and then inside the one of the child window, we have another child window, which is the static controller. Okay. So I'm gonna leave this at this point, and hopefully next video things gonna get a little bit more less confusing for you guys. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing either. So Windows API is not as complicated as it may appear initially. So hopefully things get better. Okay, thank you.